The most important relationship this side of heaven is who you marry. That's who your spouse is, the one that you covenant before God to love and to care for and to stay faithful to. And the only real legitimate breaking of that covenant is by death. And the question that I posed to you at the beginning of the show is, how do we manage our money wisely with our spouse? Many of us are not doing this alone. Many of us are investing, managing money, budgeting, all that stuff with our life partner, with our spouse, with our husband or wife. This is the single most important relationship you have outside of the relationship with God and on this side of heaven. The number one relationship. The reason for this, quite simply, is because marriage is to be a reflection of the gospel. It is a reflection of Christ and his church, where the man, as a picture of Christ, leads and dies for and cares for and honors his bride, and the church submits to and follows the headship of her husband. The wife does as the church does to Christ. That's how it is. A picture of Christ in the church. It's a picture of the gospel. It's a reflection of the gospel. It's a beautiful thing. You did not covenant with your kids. You did not covenant with your parents or your siblings or your in-laws. You covenanted before God with your spouse. The most important relationship that any of us has. Unfortunately, as we said earlier, money can be one of, if not the most, certainly one of the most divisive issues in a marriage. So it is vital, friends, that you're equipped with the tools and the mindset on how to be on each other's team and manage your money well together. I understand we're getting a little bit into marriage counseling here, but I really want to focus this on finances because this is an important issue. It really is. Especially if you're young like me and you're still in those formative years of your marriage, or even if you're not married yet, or if you've been married for many, many years. This applies to you, I believe. So how do we do this well? How do we invest well? How do we save well? Be generous, tithe, be biblically responsible together on a team. You are not like this, our radio audience, I'm bumping my fist together. You are not facing each other, trying to overpower the other one. You are shoulder to shoulder on each other's team. So how do we do this well? I want to give you a few practical words of wisdom. Number one, simply, is be on each other's team. I know it sounds kind of obvious, but that's the truth. Be on each other's team. When you get married, your identity changes completely. Before you were married, it was I, and after you are married, it is we. Here's what this means. And by the way, this is true until one of you dies. Death is the only legitimate breaker of the marriage covenant. So many couples fall into the trap of hoarding what they think is theirs, even from their spouse. They'll say, this is mine, this is my bank account, it's my money, I make this money, so I'm going to keep it for myself. A wake-up call for many of us is that nothing belongs to just you anymore if you are married. Nothing does. Your identity has completely changed. You are not single anymore. It is not I, it is now we. And this is true of you whether you were just married or whether you've been married for 40 years and you've been operating in this mindset of me, me, me. It's mine. It's not yours. It is yours collectively, you and your spouse, you and your wife, you and your husband. Here's one example. I believe couples are at their best when they trust each other to have a shared bank account. It's such a simple thing. But I know so many couples who have separate bank accounts because there is a lack of trust. You're a team. You're not by yourself anymore. If there are serious trust issues, I'm not saying overlook those. Those have to be worked through. But you've covenanted together. You've got to trust one another. Here's how Megan and I look at it, and I think this is right. I'm not trying to say this to toot my own horn, but I think it's right. I make the money, but once the money hits our bank account, it is ours. I don't make the money and say, now you have to ask me first to use my money. No, I don't think that way. When the money comes in, it's our money. Megan has the freedom to spend it just as much as I do. We're a team. You're a team. Act like it. You're a team. Number one, be on each other's team. Number two, figure out your spending tendencies. Oftentimes, people tend towards one of two traits with money. Here they are. Many of us are spenders. Some of us are savers. Many of us are savers. Some of us are spenders. A little bit different there. Neither one is inherently bad, but each one comes with its own set of challenges. At its best, the spender understands that money is meant to be spent. Perhaps they have an easier time holding things with open hands. But at their worst, spenders can become reckless and foolish. They spend what they don't have on what they don't need. Savers at their best understand that money is a dangerous thing, and so you need to make sure that you have enough for times of need. They oftentimes operate in wisdom at their best, putting money aside for future needs. That's really good. But at their worst, the savers can very easily become hoarders. They can become idolatrous with their money. They can hold tightly, thinking that it belongs to them when actually it belongs to God. Do you see how both can face troubles? Both can face temptations? Neither one is any better or worse than the other one, truthfully. Now, at different times, it's interesting. Megan and I have actually, we've exhibited both of these traits. At times, I've been the saver. At times, she's been. I think right now, I tend a little more towards the saver and she tends a little more towards the spender. But if she's listening, she can correct me on that. Maybe I'll have her put it in the chat if she's listening and correct me on it. But I think that's more what it is right now. When we were first married, it went the other way a little bit. But all that means is that I need to make sure to hold the money with open hands and she needs to make sure to not spend it recklessly. That's basically what that means. Both of us face equal challenges with that. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not a bad thing. And usually what happens is spenders marry savers, which could make for really interesting conversations between the two of you. But you got to figure out your tendencies. Figure out which one of you is the spender and which is the saver. Figure out which is which and be sure not to bring unnecessary shame on the other one. Spenders, don't become overly judgmental on the savers by calling them tight-fisted and Ebenezer Scrooges and mean and holding their money tightly. And savers, don't look at the spenders and look down your nose at them and say they're reckless and they're spending what they don't. Don't do any of that. Look at the best in each other. Certainly, if sins come up, absolutely bring those to the surface. And that's why you're on a team, by the way. Number 2 is figure out your spending tendencies. Number 1 is be on each other's team. Number 3, create a financial plan together. Now, I'm speaking to myself here, and if my wife is watching, she's laughing at me because I've not done a very good job of this, but you got to do this together. Creating a budget, living within your means, spending less than what you bring in, and also, I would say, creating an FISM partnership. And when you do that, when you go to financialissues.org and click Become a Partner, make sure your spouse knows your login info. That's a great thing to do. Make sure you do it together. Make sure you do it together. Figure out which roles work best for you. Who takes care of paying the mortgage? Who takes care of buying the groceries? Different things like that. And I would add, if you have a disagreement, you both sought the Lord, your marriage is based on the roles defined by Scripture, it's a good idea, in my opinion, if you're a Christian couple and the husband loves and serves and leads and the wife submits, for the husband to make the final decision as the covenant head. Lastly, before we close, just like you would do on your own, look to glorify God with your money, except do it together. Do it together. Pray together. Ask God to give you the wisdom to manage your money. Study Proverbs, study 1 Timothy, study Matthew 5. Listen to Financial Issues together. And a no-brainer here is tithe together. Give back to the Lord. Be on each other's team. None of this belongs to you, folks. None of it belongs to you as a couple. None of it belongs to you individually. Ultimately, it is all the Lord's.